Hello, my name's Henry Levander. I read the book Divided We Fall. It's by Trent Reedy. It was published in 2014 and is a science fiction novel. So the plot of the book starts with a kid named Danny. Danny is a regular high school kid. In the summer, he joined the army to make some money. And Danny gets called during the school year, which is unusual, to go to work at a protest in Boise. He goes to work at the protest. He accidentally shoots somebody. And Denny ends up getting protected by the senator because at the same time, a president's trying to pass a bill that starts the protests, and the senator's against this bill. Danny and the senator end up going against the president. The president tries invading Idaho, and Idaho becomes its own kind of state, and it starts a war between the U.S. and Idaho. What I like most about the book is there was a lot of modern day media included. Anything that Danny would do would get recorded by someone in the news. There's a lot of stuff being pushed out about Danny, a lot of fake news. The book made sure to include that aspect and how it pressured Danny and how it kind of impacted his life in such a significant way to make him almost in a depressed state. Danny was always going through anxiety, and this was kind of caused by the amount of people and how modern day society and kind of the cancel culture and modern day media just put someone down even if they don't know what's true. The biggest thing I didn't like about the book was it would go on for about 3 or 4 pages at the end of every chapter about like news articles or somebody just random speaking and never told the reader who was speaking. It was just some random reporter, and they could bring up something from left field about something else that's going on in their society or what else is happening. And to be honest, it took away from the element of Danny and his friends trying to be regular high school kids living in such a crazy scenario that I just didn't like it. I liked the main plot and the main story, and it kind of just felt like something to the side, and I wasn't a huge fan of it. So the first attitude I did for the book was tone, and on page 242, I have a little bit of a reading to demonstrate the tone of part of this book. It says, "Yes, coach." He sat back down, keeping his eyes on his feet. It felt good to see TJ shut down like that, especially after this idiot stunt with the reporters. And I was really glad to see the guys that all seemed talking to the media. And then 2 or 3 sentences later, it says, when we finally got to the field, I kept screwing up the plays and running the wrong routes, and I missed about every pass thrown to me. In tackling drills, I got knocked on my ass at least 3 times. I tried to focus. I tried to give a hard practice like I always did, but I could not stop thinking about the fact that depending on what to do. So right here, it shows a tone that Danny's in his head. Danny really can't get out of his head. There's a lot going on in his life, and Danny's kind of seeing everything. He's making the worst out of anything, and he's kind of shutting himself down. For tone, I also decided to pick on page 42, 242 and 42. That's kind of lucky. It says, "Inside my mask, I could hear every breath heavy and loud. I kept my thumb on my safety switch of my weapon with my right finger, right next to my trigger. Oh God, I prayed, please help me get out of this one. This stuff isn't cool anymore. I just want to," and then starts a little dash. Something smacked my mask and my weapon went off. About 2 sentences later, it says, "Hold your fire," someone shouted. Oh shit. Sorry for the cussing. That's what the book says. And this part of the book shows how worried Danny is. Danny's going through a protest. This is his first time being kind of engaged in anything military at all. So Danny has such a hard time going through it. He can't really get through it. He's reacting to everything in such an eager, kind of expressive tone. The next one I decided to pick was detail. It says on page 209, it says, "I couldn't hide my grin as I walked through the firing line. This was a sweet rifle, and I hadn't gone shooting since basic training. I hoped I wasn't too rusty, slapping in the magazine and chambering around. I started from the standing position. I centered the front sight, post a bottle, breathed in, exhaled in, and hold. I squeezed the trigger, and the bottle shattered. I aimed at another and fired again, missing. I might have jerked the trigger too hard that time, pulling my shot off." So the detail in this book shows Danny shooting. He's at a firing range. Part of it shows how Danny's so focused on how he's so inclined to shoot well by using his best kind of just excellence of his focus. And it really expresses how Danny's kind of easing off some of the stress that everything has caused him. But it also gives us detail in Danny focusing, and he kind of wants to pinpoint, he kind of wants to make it perfect. And then earlier in the book, on page 76, it says, In the locker room Friday night, Sweeney had some of his screaming, thrashing metal music blasting in the new high-powered speakers that he brought from his comm to the station. TJ and Dylan traded fierce licks on pretend guitars. Cal wore all of his gear except his helmet and cleats. He walked back and forth with his fists pressed to the sides of his head, his biceps bulging. He was whispering something so fiercely that he looked like he was literally going to kill somebody. So this part of the book, it kind of describes before a football game, they're getting ready to go out, and all the boys are kind of just getting ready. They're getting in the tone. It gives you the detail of what's going on and how everybody's just they're ready to get to it. Basically, they're ready to go play their game, and they're kind of getting hyped up and all amped up. And that part of the book, the detail just expresses the mood, the tone, and just the pure emotion spilling out of these boys. I do recommend this book for people around my age that are either interested in the army or interested in politics, because the book has a lot of army-based things and a lot of politics going on that keep kind of the war that's going on in the states divided. I think a good age for this book is between ages of like 18 to mid-20s, because there's cussing in the book and you need to appreciate the plot and what's actually happening. Because if you don't understand some of the stuff about the government and how federal and state government completely separate from each other, it just, the whole thing crumbles and you really want to understand what's going on. The experience that I brought personally to the book was a lot of my family's military. My dad's Air Force, my uncle before he passed away was Air Force, my grandpa was Air Force, my stepdad was in the Navy. So I brought a personal level to the book because a lot of it dealt with the military, about what they have to go through. I learned about a lot of the basic training and that experience from my dad and from my stepdad and how crappy some of the conditions are. And it affected me because I realized if I was a kid that age that was involved with such a big shooting or accident and I was publicly brought over the media, even though I knew I was right, it made me think, what would I do in that situation? Because Danny was just a 17-year-old age kid in that book. And just to think about it, less than a year ago, I was a 17-year-old kid. So it made me think, what would I do?